much for attending. Andrew, thank you for the introduction. Andrew mentioned that he was nervous. Well, he has no idea what I'm feeling right now. First talk for Vegan Campout. Hold on 1 second. Vegan Campout. Who is excited? Sorry, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear it. Who's excited? This is amazing. It is so great to see you all. I really didn't anticipate this many people coming to this talk. It's such a niche talk, and I actually thought I'm going to maybe have like an intimate setting. So for you all to have extracted yourself from all the amazing things that are happening out there, thank you in advance. Thank you so much. So, what can I say? Today's talk is really quite a personal talk about my journey with activism. For those of you that don't know, I've been vegan for about 10, 11 years or so, and for the first part of that vegan journey, I was admittedly a quiet, introverted vegan. I kind of just got along with it and did my own thing. And then, sort of 5 years into that journey, so about 5-6 years ago, I was continuously looking at the videos that you see on YouTube and on social media, and I was getting more and more deeply hurt by these videos. And my partner at the time, came home one day and caught me crying, and he said, well, without any sympathy, he said, well, what are you doing about it? And I said, well, like, what do you mean? What do you mean, what am I doing about it? And he said, well, what are you doing about it? And I said, well, I'm vegan, what more can I do? And I've signed this petition, and I signed that petition. What more can I do? And he said, well, hold on, you're a lawyer, and you're an academic, so where are you utilising your skills to help the animals? And that was the biggest kick up the behind I've ever had. And from that day on, I became an activist and an advocate for the animals. And then the journey with the Hindu community began, because I myself am a Hindu. I've been brought up and raised as a Hindu, and my mum has always taught me this saying. She's always said that don't throw stones at glass houses when you live in one yourself. And for me, that was a big wake-up call, because I thought, well, I can promote veganism amongst, the masses of people, which of course I will do, but what about my own community? How can I advocate veganism? How can I relay the horrors of especially the dairy industry to a community who honours the cow, who sees the cow as sacred, whose scriptural references adore the cow? How do I do that? So I started the activism journey there, and I went all gung-ho, and I was black and white, and I was there basically, telling the Hindu community, you've got to go vegan, this is what happens to the cows, why are you not vegan? And you know what, it backfired. It backfired so badly that I started to get ousted from my own community, and my own community began to turn against me, and I was called an anti-Hindu. I was called a Hindu-phobic, okay? And then some years ago, again, it's a journey, I was introduced very kindly to a number of Vedic Hindu scholars. One is based in India, one is based in Switzerland. And they heard about what I was trying to do, they resonated and agreed with my message, and they began to lovingly guide me along the way. So my understanding and my education of Hinduism started then, because I thought, if I want to actually educate the Hindu community, I've got to understand where they're coming from. I've got to understand what mindset they have. And so this talk is birthed from that journey, and it's that talk that I want to share with you. Before I actually begin, can anyone here perhaps raise their hand if they've done any activism or outreach and have come across perhaps a Hindu person, a Hindu family, and haven't really known how to sort of engage in dialogue with them? Any of you come across a situation like that? No one? Okay, so you're all in for a bit of a treat. Hopefully after today you'll be able to engage in fluid dialogue with any Hindu person that you meet, okay? Well, let's see. If you don't, then I've not done the talk any justice. you about why the cow is seen as sacred to Hindus, I want to just talk a little bit about compassion in activism. The one thing that I have learned, and I learn every day, is that if you want to engage in sort of constructive, fluid dialogue with any community, any person, it's really, really important to try to understand where that person is coming from. Okay, really, really important. If you cannot try to see where their mindset is, you're going to be coming across so many defenses. And of course, if you're talking about food choices to anyone, that's a really personal thing. And then if you add food choices of an individual and couple that with some of these spiritual and religious beliefs and practices, well, you potentially are going to be facing some big, strong walls. So if you can actually engage with somebody and show them that you understand compassionately where they are coming from, you're going to hopefully open that door to some fluid and constructive dialogue. I will tell you a little bit about why the cow is so important, but I am going to caveat that, okay? The one thing about the Hindu community, and I am generalizing a little bit here, and I'm talking about the sort of masses rather than the minority, although that is changing, is that a lot of Hindus are very stuck in history. Okay, now that's not a criticism, it's just the way it is, and it's something we as activists have to understand and accept. A lot of Hindus are stuck in the knowledge of what they believed or how they believed the cow was treated many years ago. So today, when they are consuming dairy or utilizing dairy for their spiritual practices, in their mind, they have the sort of idea and the blueprint of back in the village in India of how the cow was treated. Now, I'm not at all standing here and saying that the cow was treated better back in the village in India. I'm simply explaining to you that a Hindu person, a typical Hindu person, will believe that the cow was treated better then, and they will have this idea that that's how the cow was generally treated. So with that in mind, we'll now look at why the cow is given so much importance. Let's have a look. So Hinduism, a little bit of a history lesson and a little bit of RE lesson. Apparently Hinduism is like over 4,000 years old. It's a religion. I mean, they call it a religion, but it's not really a religion. It's a way of life. And it's an accumulation of various cultural beliefs and practices that have amalgamated and has now called itself Hinduism. Okay, so it's a very sacred, it's a very ancient religion. There's a number of different scriptures within Hinduism that Hindus will generally know about. The most important one being, well, I shouldn't say the most important one, the more prominent one. Okay, the more prominent, the more well-known one is the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita. Now, the Bhagavad Gita, a scriptural text, makes many references to the cow. Okay, makes many references to the cow. And of course, within the Bhagavad Gita, you've got one of the Hindu gods, Lord Krishna, who is known as a cow protector. Okay, so there's numerous references to the cow, and I'll go through those references shortly. And then you've got Lord Krishna, the deity, the illustration that you see in the middle, who is seen to be the cow herder, the cow protector, the lover of cows. He so tenderly looked after these cows so beautifully. This is poetic similes, okay, about looking after every being. If you know a little bit about Hinduism, and I often get asked this, people ask me, well, how can you guys have so many gods? Oh, we have millions of gods, but a lot of those gods are actually depicted in animal form. Now, one of the reasons why Hindu gods are also depicted in animal form is because in Hinduism, the ancient scriptures teach us that there is a soul in every being, right? So we actually believe that there is a soul in the plant, in an animal, in the tree, in the air that we breathe, in the fire, in water, which is again why in many spiritual practices, we will as Hindus utilize all of these elements in some of our spiritual practices because there's a soul, there's godliness in everything. So Hinduism believes, this is the first thing, if you're talking to a Hindu, have this at the back of your mind, the ancient scriptures teach us that there is godliness, sacredness in every being, animals, plants, and beings, human beings. Now, many again may believe that, well, Hindus worship form, okay? And you've got lots of deities and pictures and illustrations of lots of deities, but we don't actually worship form. It's a misconception. We're actually really quite artistic. We like to have form to help us meditate and focus on the fact that everything is impermanent, everything is changing, okay? And we utilize the pictures, we utilize the statues of the deities to help us focus on that everlasting truth of impermanence. So why is the cow given so much importance then? Well, I mentioned the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita actually talks about the cow as akin to Mother Earth. Okay, so Hindus actually believe that the cow is seen as akin to the earth. The cow is also seen as akin to a mother, a nourisher, the giver of all life. So it's actually a mistake to believe that it's the cow as an animal herself that is sacred. It isn't. The cow is metaphorical for the earth, for all beings. And that Hindus believe actually that every god resides in the cow because the cow is seen to be akin to the earth. But also historically, and we're talking, many, many years ago, and in some villages this still happens now, the cow has been the giver of all things, because in some villages in India, cow dung is utilized to use for fuel, to cook upon. Cow urine in Ayurvedic practice, in Eastern Ayurvedic medicine, is known to have very healing properties. Now, of course, I've got to caveat this again. Remember, when these texts and scriptures were written, we're talking about thousands of years ago. So perhaps the property and the nutrient value of what the cow was giving was far higher than what the cow would be giving now. Okay, that's just something to bear in mind when you're perhaps talking and advocating to a Hindu. They will perhaps say to you, well, the urine of a cow, the dung of a cow, and the milk of a cow is, so nourishing. Well, actually, is it? Bearing in mind how the cow is treated now. So, as you can see, the cow carries many scriptural importances, but also the cow herself has given so much to the people of India, the people where Hindus actually come from. Her urine, the dung that she produced, it was all utilized. And Hindus actually generally believe that there was once a symbiotic relationship that they had with the cow. Now, unfortunately, like I said at the beginning, they are somewhat stuck in this mindset where there is still a belief that there's still the symbiosis that exists. Clearly, of course, we all know that there isn't. I have got the word colonization there at the bottom because I cannot deny the fact that colonization has had some impact on the white revolution of India, which happened in the 70s, where the dairy, the small dairy utilities that we had was suddenly industrialized. Okay, and now India is one of the biggest dairy producers in the world. Now, apart from the cow being given this scriptural and sacred importance, it's also useful to know that when you are talking to a Hindu person or a Hindu family, they don't only just see the cow as important, but they also utilize her milk. So the cow is given primary importance in the scriptures because she's seen as akin to the earth, akin to a mother, but also what she produces is given secondary importance, i.e. the milk she produces. Hindus will use the milk for spiritual purposes. So what you see there is the offering of cow's milk on Lord Shiva's Shivling. Lord Shiva is another Hindu deity, and a lot of Hindus will, every Monday, go to a temple and they will offer milk over the Shivling. So not only are you dealing with the Hindu mindset of how the cow was once treated in the symbiotic relationship, but you're also dealing with the fact that the Hindus utilize dairy quite a lot in spiritual practices. We also utilize ghee, clarified butter, for lighting our divas. Now, divas is basically a candle, and this is done almost every day in a typical Hindu family. You know, once maybe in the morning, once in the evening, we will light a candle in the form of a diva using clarified butter, using ghee, and that will be, you know, put somewhere amongst the temple area. So again, dairy is used there. There's another spiritual practice called Panchamrit. For those Hindus that are here, you may have heard of this. This is again another spiritual practice which utilizes honey, ghee, and yogurt and milk, and it's all mixed together, and this is offered to the gods. And the reason these items are mixed together is because they're seen as purer items. And of course they're seen as pure items because if the cow is honored so much, then what she produces is seen as pure. So again, have at the back of your mind this fact that Hindus will be using and utilizing dairy quite extensively in their spiritual practices. But then, the Hindu scriptures talk abundantly about compassion and ahimsa. Anyone tell me what ahimsa means here? You must have all heard about ahimsa. Yeah, non-violence, that's generally the general interpretation. Sorry, my clicker's decided not to. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so ahimsa, the sort of general interpretation is that it is sort of non-violence towards any being, towards every being. And within the Hindu scriptures, every single scripture, by the way, every single Hindu scripture there is intertwined this message of compassion and ahimsa. So basically, the basic tenet there, the basic message there is any act that you do or any inaction that you don't do must have intertwined with it compassion and ahimsa towards all beings. Okay? So that's something that we need to have at the back of our mind when we're talking to a Hindu family. So when you are then faced with a Hindu family, and you're talking about the dairy industry, they may turn around and say, well, hold on 1 second. Who are you to tell us that dairy is so bad? In our scriptures, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna was a cow protector. He was a cow herder. He used to lovingly steal the butter and eat the butter. So if he did it, then of course it's fine that we do it. And often when I'm faced with that question, the one question that I do ask them, and I think it's always nicer to ask questions rather than make statements, is, well, actually, if Lord Krishna was here today, 2021, what would he make of the dairy industry? What would he actually make? Let me just explain. What would he make of the fact that on modern dairy farms, a cow will insert his arm into the rectum of a female cow, a heifer, at the tender age of 15 months, to feel for the neck of her cervix, and with the other hand will get the artificial insemination gun and inject into her vagina the bull semen to make her pregnant? What would Lord Krishna make of that one? And then just wait for their answer. Or tenderly move on to the next question. Okay? Because a lot of Hindus, like I said, are very stuck in this mindset of, well, Lord Krishna liked butter and Lord Krishna was a cow herder, and so it's absolutely okay for us to consume dairy. Well, what would Lord Krishna make of that now? What would Lord Krishna make of the fact that a calf is separated from her mother within 24 to 48 hours of giving birth? What do the scriptures say about that? And they may say, but in my village in India, when I grew up, my grandparents, my parents, they had a cow, and the cow was lovingly treated as a member of the family, and the calf was allowed to drink the mother's milk, and then we took whatever was left over. To which I often respond, yes, that may have been the case. But where do you buy your milk from now? Which one do you have? Red Top, Blue Top, Green Top, Morrison's, Aldi, Lidl, Sainsbury's, Asda? Where do you buy your milk from? Do you have a cow in your garden? Do you milk her tenderly by hand? And just wait for their response. The other thing that they will not also know, or perhaps they may know, but you just need to remind them. Sorry, this clicker's got a mind of its own. that there's an intrinsic link between the beef industry and the dairy industry. I mean, when I was a vegetarian, I had no idea that the two industries were intrinsically linked. And so perhaps gently explain to them that when a cow has matured and has given as much milk as she can and she can't bear any more calves, at the tender age of 4 to 6 years of age, she's sent to the same slaughterhouse that the beef cow is sent to turn into cheap beef. And in fact, if the dairy cow gives birth to a male calf, he's often shot at birth. And I don't know if any of you actually are aware of the Animal Justice Project campaign that we're part of. They did a Freedom of Information request recently, which actually found that only last year, 65,000 dairy calves, male dairy calves, were shot at birth at the tender age of 1 month. This is an FOI request confirmed by the government. This is how many calves were shot. Share that with the Hindu and then see what their response is to that. What do they make of the fact that we don't actually milk the cow by hand? And they may have memories in their village where the cow was milked lovingly by hand. Well, actually here we have rotating milking parlours where the cow is sent in 2 to 3 times a day to be milked, whilst her calf is sitting in a hutch only a few meters away, crying out for her mother. So again, important to remind the Hindu family about these realities. Once you've actually got their attention though, one of the questions that I often get asked is, well, what about my chai? What about my tea? Like, how will I enjoy my tea? How will I enjoy, the foods that I eat? What about those things? Well, look, this is just one snapshot off the internet of Indian vegan recipes. You can get vegan naan, you can get vegan chana masala, you get vegan biryani. There's recipes in abundance on the internet, so they only need to be pointed to that direction. And they'll be able to see that actually they're not going to miss out at all. Now, one question that I'm often asked, and I'm coming towards the end of the talk, one question I am often asked is, well, look, what about ahimsa milk? Does anybody know what ahimsa milk is, or an ahimsa farm? Anyone ever heard of an ahimsa farm? Okay, yeah, at the back. Speak up, speak up. Yeah, thank you. So an ahimsa farm is typically known as a no-slaughter farm. Okay, so a cow is led to live her life naturally. She's milked by hand, and when she cannot bear any more calves, and again, she gives birth naturally, she is made pregnant naturally. Once she cannot give any more milk, she's just led to live her life out naturally on the farm. So it's a no-slaughter farm. Now, a lot of Hindus will ask you about this, but the majority of Hindus are not buying their milk from an ahimsa farm. And in fact, in the UK, there's only about 2 to 3 ahimsa farms in the UK. Now, they're selling milk at about approximately £2.60 a litre. So the question I therefore pose to the Hindu family is, well, would you be paying £2.60 a litre from an ahimsa farm? I mean, would that be enough? Would that be sufficient for you and your family with the amount of milk that is generally used? But also, one of the scriptures in Hinduism, you don't need to remember this, it's just worth knowing, but the text itself is called the Vishnu Purana, actually forbids the selling of cow's milk. Because of course, if a Hindu sees the cow as akin to the mother, the selling of her milk is seen as basically you selling your mother. So the Hindu scripture itself says we should not be selling cow's milk. So remind the Hindu so ask them, maybe you need to do a little bit of research and look this up yourself. After all, this is the culture and religion that you follow. But does one of your texts not actually forbid the sale of cow's milk? But if they are still stressing on about ahimsa milk, then remind them that if Hindus see the cow as akin to the earth and see the earth as a mother, then what is the actual carbon dioxide blueprint? What is the footprint of ahimsa cows on the earth? And I've actually got some figures here for you, which I wrote down. So the water footprint, this is just looking at the water footprint of milk on an ahimsa farm, on a modern dairy farm, the water footprint is 1,000 litres for every litre of milk. Okay, on a modern dairy farm, 1,000 litres. On an ahimsa farm, on a farm where the cow is not killed, the actual water footprint is 10 to 12,000 litres of water. Now again, if the Hindu is to see the earth as a mother, and we are to treat the earth as a mother and respect her in that way, then what are we doing to the earth by creating ahimsa farms? And surely it's time, therefore, to re-evaluate our cultural practices, remind ourselves about compassion and ahimsa, and change some of our spiritual practices. Still partake in them, of course, but just substitute the dairy with a kinder alternative. And that's how I usually leave it with the Hindu family. And once I've left it with them, what I often say is, look, and now it's up to your moral compass. The next time you walk into a supermarket, you find out where your moral compass sits. And if you want to walk 10 steps further and reach for the plant-based milk, do that. And leave it there. So that's the end of my talk. It's short and sweet. I hope you've taken something about Hinduism, veganism, and the holy cow. Thanks once again for attending. I'm opening up the hall for any questions if you have any. So by all means, please do fire away and ask. Thank you so much.
Anyone got any questions for Dina?
Have you been able to convince any Hindus to use plant milk in their offerings, as you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago, we had our first temple that decided to go fully vegan. Unfortunately, the priest that was running the temple passed away, and so they reverted as soon as he passed away back to being non-vegan. But in terms of families, Hindu families, yeah, I mean, my own family, look, when I turned vegan myself, my own family used to, often mock me for being vegan, and they thought it was a phase, they thought it was a fad. Then they attended one of my talks, overnight became vegan, and now they still very much abundantly take part in all these spiritual practices, but everything's veganized. If you go onto my YouTube channel, Spiritually Vegan on YouTube, I've done a number of interviews with priests and other practitioners of Hinduism who all advocate the more ahimsa elements of practicing Hinduism. So using water instead of milk, offering a tiny drop as opposed to a whole liter, utilizing plant-based milks. And it doesn't mean you're any less of a Hindu, it doesn't mean you're any less spiritual, it just means that you're actually abiding by the scriptures, by complying with compassion and ahimsa. So yeah, the temple that I mentioned, but also a number of families have become vegan over the time that I've been advocating. Of course I face resistance, but what I have found is that the younger generation are more open, and then they are doing the work by convincing their families, and I leave it to their good judgment to do it in the way they see fit with their families. Yeah, it's slow but sure.
Yeah, thank you for that talk, Dina. That's quite enlightening. Hindus, as you mentioned before, you diwas in their celebration. So they use butter, like you mentioned, and ghee. So do you know any kind of vegan substitutes that they can use when they do their celebration and do the diwas?
So one of the, for divas where clarified butter and ghee is used, sesame oil is just as sufficient and absolutely spiritually fine to use. And with regards to the Panchamrit, the spiritual practice where 5 different products are mixed together, for the sweetness, instead of honey, my mom uses a little bit of agave syrup or date syrup. Instead of yogurt, she uses soya yogurt. Of course, the dairy, the milk is replaced with plant-based milk. Does she
Hi Dina, thanks for the great informative talk. I wanted to ask you how you get when you go to restaurants. How do the waiters react? Is it quite easy getting what you want if you go to an Indian restaurant?
You know, one thing that we often forget is that the Hindu or the Indian cuisine, especially the whole food Indian cuisine, is naturally vegan. The Hindu cuisine is predominantly based on rice, lentils, pulses, beans, flour. There's nothing non-vegan there at all. There's no dairy there. And so I think if you go to an Indian restaurant, if you go to the core basic tenet of Indian cuisine, it's naturally vegan. And of course, then over the years, we've got things like paneer that's, you know, sort of abundantly available on menus. Well, you know, a lot of restaurants are replacing that with tofu now. So they're making it in the same way, but you've got tofu instead. A lot of places are replacing butter with vegan butter. In fact, now you can even get vegan ghee as well, so clarified butter. You can get vegan clarified ghee. So, you know, lots of restaurants are now catching on. And again, it's a marketing thing. You know, veganism is it's on the rise exponentially. So if a restaurant is not adapting their menu to accommodate veganism, unfortunately, they are going to be left behind. So if they want to be able to market themselves appropriately to a wider audience, then they better start shifting their menus to more of a vegan, greener alternative. Yeah.
Hi there, Dina. I was vegan before I met Dina, a good few years ago. I was born on a dairy farm, and it was Dina that introduced me to activism, animal activism. I would like to be as close to my default religion that Dina is as close to her Hinduism. But I've heard Dina speak on many topics, whether it be veganism and yoga, veganism on Hinduism, veganism on factory farming, and all those sort of things. And I just want to say that she's been a great inspiration to me. I'm glad to see her here this evening, and I wish her all the best with all the work you do.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful